Americans going to the polls today to cast their vote to elect the 47th president of that country. Yesterday, the presidential candidates Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, they were also on a tour of swing states with the aim to sway undecided voters, as you can hear right now. This is a neck-and-neck race with no certain outcome, no matter what each candidate says, and the world awaits to see who will lead the last global superpower from 2025 to 2029. Where do the U.S. presidential candidates Kamala Harris and Donald Trump stand on global issues? Let's find that out. To discuss this, in studio with me, I've got SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena, Senior Lecturer at the Department of Political Science, University of Pretoria, Dr. Sithumbile Mbete, and also joining us from New York, we've got a Professor of International Affairs at the New School and the founder and editor of the website Africa is a Country, Professor Sean Jacobs. What a pleasure to have such an awesome panel assembled. Good morning to all of you. And Prof, I should be saying good night, but we're going to keep you up for a couple more minutes if you don't mind.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Prof, I think it's best to start with you because you're there, you're living it, you're seeing the sentiment, and we are all saying this is so hard to call. What are you seeing? How is it looking there? And is there any way of predicting this?
I mean, I think nobody, thanks for inviting me, no one wants to, I think, take a chance or put their reputations on the line by saying, so I've heard like various sentiments. There was a poll that came out in Iowa that said women over the ages of 65 and, mothers, grandmothers were leaning towards Iowa is a state that is historically very solid for the Republican Party, and now it was shifting to the Democrats. Then the next day, I was talking to my students tonight. I had a class tonight, and I said, as they were leaving, I said, who do you think would win? And they said, Trump would win. So it's very difficult to predict American elections. Partly it's because it's such a big country. Depending where you are, so in New York City, it might be about cost of living. If you're living in the border states in the Southwest, it's about immigration. If you live in Florida, it's about climate change. And if you're an American political candidate, you have to appeal to all these different sectors, communities, interest groups. If you're in the West Virginia, it's about coal. If it's in New York, it's about renewable energy. So I think it's really difficult to be a candidate in the US. And so what candidates do is they basically say nothing, or they do what Trump, I think what Trump has done, which is to throw the whole kitchen sink at people. And the sense is that Trump might show some desperation on his side by just sort of he's unraveling. But you don't. This is the US. People vote, it seems, for reasons that seem irrational.
Yeah. So let's look at the two candidates. Now, Sophie, let me bring you in here. I mean, they're very different, and it's just been, even though we only checked in for a couple of minutes to each of their final rallies, you already got a sense of the two candidates that are standing there. You got Harris going very progressive in her policies, healthcare, climate action, social justice reforms. She's very much so on coalition building and, we're all one. Trump, on the other hand, completely populist. I mean, you heard him speaking now. Deregulation, immigration control, a nationalist stance, direct, polarizing, build walls. I mean, they got two different themes, and yet who knows what everyone wants?
With Donald Trump, we know Donald Trump. We've had 4 years of Donald Trump. So you are not even going to guess what he is up to and what he wants to do. And with Kamala Harris, she was the vice president. When you are a vice president or deputy president, you step in most of the time. And therefore, we didn't know much about her in terms of her stance. But it's quite clear that she is going to continue where Biden left off if she gets elected. And she will try and pursue the liberal policy, but some more, I don't want to say socialist, but because her target is also the middle class, ensuring that you bring in those who are excluded and those who are struggling. With Donald Trump, it's clear, it's business and the conservative, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's what Trump stands for.
Yeah.
On foreign policy, you look at Kamala Harris, we are going to see a continuation. Perhaps she is going to do things differently, particularly when you look at the war in Ukraine. She is going to back Ukraine, and she is going to continue to support financially and resource-wise NATO that is behind Ukraine. And on the Middle East question, she is going to continue to support Israel, but insist on peace process and also two-state solution. And when you look at where Trump is today, it's Michigan. Michigan, this is where you have a lot of minority groups, but secondly, a large voter bloc of people who support the Middle East question in relation to the Palestinian cause. And he is trying to garner support there. Kamala Harris went to Pennsylvania earlier on, quite an important state with large number of college votes there and swing states, and therefore quite important. And therefore you can see the strategies. But these are two different people. But at the end of the day, a president of the United States of America, whether it's a Republican, it's Democrats, will always put America first.
Yeah.
For us, with the G20 coming next year, it will be interesting to see whoever wins, whether he will come to South Africa. If it's Trump, I don't know. You know his stance in relation to Africa. When it's Kamala, I'm sure she's looking forward to come to the continent. She has been here on the continent. She was in Tanzania as the vice president, and she would definitely want to come and see Mandela's land.
Yeah.
And we are handing over to America in 2026. America must lead the G20.
So take from what Sophie's just said, Dr. Mbete, would it be better for a Harris win than a Trump win for Africa? Because we're sitting here, we're watching those elections, and there are a lot of policies that are going to be made in decisions regarding the continent and where you stand. So what are your views on this?
Look, I think with regards Africa, there's a lot of more consistency than there is difference between the Republicans and the Democrats on Africa policy. And in actual fact, you know, in a lot of ways, Donald Trump, apart from his statements about the continent as S-hole countries.
We remember that well.
And there was the Muslim ban, of course, that affected certain countries on the continent. And there were efforts by Trump to reduce development spending, to reduce aid to the continent. A lot of Trump's approach to Africa continued with standing policies that were there, like PEPFAR, etc., and then really just ignored the continent for the most part.
Yeah.
What we've seen under Biden is a rhetorical shift, and we know Vice President Harris was on the continent, visited Zambia, Tanzania, and I think Kenya, and so there has been a little bit more engagement. But in terms of actual material support, there's actually been a decline of US development aid and funding to Africa since the war in Ukraine started in 2022. The bulk of US aid spending goes to Ukraine. Africa is at the very, very bottom of the priority list as far as that is concerned. So, you know, any expectation that there will be any kind of substantive or material shift in a US engagement with the continent under a Harris presidency, I think is wishful thinking, because it really doesn't fit into the US's interests broadly. However, having said that, I do think that you know, Harris, when she became vice president, didn't have a big foreign policy, didn't have much foreign policy experience. She's had to sort of learn on the job and sort of through her travels, through her engagement. And she definitely does have the internationalism that Joe Biden has, the sense that the US has an important role to play as a leader of the free world, you know, to underwrite big international organizations and global governance, and should play a role in that way. And so to the extent to which the sort of multilateral order will be secure, I think it will be more secure under a Harris presidency than a Trump presidency, and I do think that overall that is better for the African continent than the reverse.
So, Prof, let me come back to you. We look at the state of the world at the moment, and I don't know if we can be proud of what the world looks like. So we're talking about a Biden presidency. We are speaking about two massive wars that are raging on, that America are very much so involved with. Ukraine, Russia, what's happening in the Middle East with funding, with weapons, with all of these kind of things. We left Donald Trump off at his rally saying, I want to bring world peace. Whether we can believe him or not, I have no idea. But can the world continue under a Biden-Harris or now a Harris presidency? The world doesn't look great.
I mean, the short answer to all of this is no. But I think there's other interesting developments. I think both the other guests have sort of pretty well described what seems like differences of degree. Both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump believe in the inherent goodness of the United States, and they believe in American empire. They just do it differently. I always joke to say the Democrats do it to you in full sentences, while in Trump's case, it's bombastic. What I think is more interesting globally is the development of BRICS. I mean, again, it's a group of countries that vary from dictatorships, absolute dictatorships, kingdoms, and at the same time democracies. And there, I think South Africa and Brazil have played leading roles. We've seen how that body that started with 5 countries has now expanded to almost 86 countries. It has its own development bank that it's developing in as a rival to the World Bank and the IMF. So there's something about where we're going. You notice that countries aren't as eager anymore to look towards the U.S. The U.S., it seems, with Donald Trump, it's an isolationist policy. It's about America first. If you look at the priorities of the both Trump and Harris, you'll notice that it's Israel-Palestine, but these are seen through a domestic frame. Then it's Ukraine / Russia, NATO, and that's followed by China. And even China itself, this is all about Trump's so-called tariff politics. And then maybe after that, you have immigration, the border. South Africa barely features. South Africa, for example, Africa, mostly featured in this election because of a group of very wealthy white men who were born in South Africa, who openly fund Trump, side with him. I'm talking about Elon Musk,
absolutely,
David Sachs, and Peter Thiel. But that's the extent to which Africa has entered this election. What will probably happen after the election, once you're done campaigning, then it's back to American interests. So it's going to be about Africa's going to enter the conversation, I think, again, on counterterrorism. It's going to enter the conversation on energy policy, Angola, Nigeria, oil, the oil that's been discovered in Ghana, in Cape Verde. Those are going to be, and South Africa, of course. South Africa is always seen as a kind of a leader of the continent. And so for that reason, I think South Africa will come back to the conversation.
Yeah, very quickly, I've literally got 3 minutes left. So let's have a look at Trump and the election rally that has come to date. I mean, attempted assassination, Kamala Harris coming in as the first possible female president of the United States, but not only female, a black female. When we look at what's happened in the run-up to these elections, I mean, there's obviously a new voter base that'll come in and look at Harris and say, that's what we want. But there's a lot that'll come in and say, no, Trump is what we want. I mean, Sophie, from the perspective of the first black female president of the United States, what is that going to do for the electorate?
It is a difficult one, whether that will be achieved. Look at 2016, a first female president possibility was shattered.
Yeah.
And now you're talking about someone with double or triple oppression of color, female, and having different views in terms of the conservatives in the United States of America. Yes, the numbers, women, even in South Africa, when you look at the voters' roll, it was women, even the voter turnout, women. But where are we in terms of women leadership in this country? Which candidate got highest number, a female? None. And therefore, it's a difficult one. This is something that is a phenomenon worldwide, the issue of women making it into the highest office in the land. And therefore, I'm not so sure. If Hillary couldn't get it, I was there, I warned my colleagues, Sharon Bryce-Pease and Aaron at that time, that there's no way Hillary is going to get this one. This man is getting it, and it did happen.
And
so
this year?
time
This year,
around,
Sophie, what do
I'm
you
not
think?
so sure, but I still feel that there are too many hurdles. She might be a better candidate for some, but there are hurdles. But who knows?
Who knows?
Let the Americans decide.
Doctor, I mean, those are the realities. She's got a lot to prove for herself. But has she proved herself on the campaign trail? Have you been convinced about her standing there and speaking?
Look, I think that she has done incredibly well on the campaign trail, given that she started so much later than Donald Trump has. I think that what the elections around the world have taught us is that people are sick of the status quo. The question is, who do US voters think is the status quo in this election? Is the status quo Harris or is the status quo Trump?
I know.
And we'll see that. Yeah, we'll know more tomorrow.
None of you want to take a guess,
No.
do you? Definitely not.
Not at
no
all.
chance.
Not at all.
I mean, Prof, you said from the beginning you would never do that to your reputation.
I mean, I don't know. I think what the other guests talked about, her becoming the first woman president of the U.S., first black woman president. To be here, it's unreal, the sense of misogyny
Yeah.
that's been part of this election. It's crazy to watch. And there's also this strange sense that a very wealthy man born with a silver spoon is seen as the representative of the underdog. Kamala Harris was born the daughter of immigrants from India and Jamaica, grew up in working class parts of Oakland, which is on the West Coast in the US, went to public schools, went to a historically black university, and somehow she is considered the elite, and Donald Trump is considered the anti-establishment candidate. Nothing makes sense here at the moment.
It doesn't. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you to all my guests. Sophie Mokoena, SABC News International Editor, Dr. Sitambile Mbete, lecturer from the University of Pretoria, and Prof. Sean Jacobs out in New York, International Affairs at the New School and founder of the editor website Africa. All right, so stay tuned to SABC News. We're going to be bringing you rolling coverage of the US elections tonight. A special focus from midnight until 2 a.m. with Blaine Herman. And then from 5 a.m. tomorrow morning, we here on Morning Live will be with you live, hopefully bringing you the first election results. We'll see you after this.